Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah. Welcome back once again to the Torah Effects. We're just about to jump into today's parashat, which is called Wayikra. I know it's called the Leviticus. This is the beginning of this book. We just finished book Shemot, which is Exodus, and this book, Leviticus, it's one of the main focus is the sacrifices. Let's find out what this whole thing is about. And of course, in this very beginning, Yahweh, our Creator, hint us how we should perhaps approach Him, and we'll find out why. So let's just jump into it. But before that, I truly want to thank all of you who are watching us. And we are in constant productions. Right now, we are making a lot of docuseries. The first one is the Torah calendar, which is out right now. And we are on the 5th episode. I'm working on the 6th right now, which is coming very soon. Episode 6 is going to be on Sunday, which is tomorrow. So watch out for that. And there are more productions coming very soon. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so you can get notifications in the future. So let's jump into Parashat Wayikra. Parashat Wayikra is very interesting to know that here in the Ochel Moed, the tent of the meeting, Yahweh calls Moshe. But we have to find out which Mishkan, which Ochel Moed, because something is not right here. We need to separate one another. So let's jump into it. Leviticus 1, verse 1, all the way to 5, verse 26. This is number 24 of the sequence of parashats throughout the whole entire year. Yahweh Wayikra, which means He called Moshe and He spoke with him. From the Mishkan, or tent of the testimony, He said, "Speak to the Bnei Yisrael, say to them, when any of you brings an offering to Yahweh, you may bring your animal offerings from the flock or from your herd." Straight out of the bag, we can see pretty much a lot of things. First one is the tent of the testimony. My question to all of you, why is it called the tent or the Mishkan of the testimony? And I'm asking all of you, maybe you want to take a guess. And the reason for it is because the testimony that the Mishkan or the Ark of the Testimony is being called like that is because of the sin of the golden calf. If you remember what they did on Mount Sinai, when they just went wild with idolatry, who were the ones who were not yielding to go into idolatry and to whoring? It was the sons of Levites. That's one of the reasons why this book, I know the Vatican and the rest of the groups gave them the name Leviticus, because the tribe of Levi were the ones in charge of the sacrifices. But if we really think about it deep down, in the root of all this, it was the Levites who were not bending their knee to idolatry. And that's one of the reasons why Yahweh gave this privilege to do the sacrifices. Now, going back over here, they needed to bring offerings, and these offerings were going to take the position of the Bnei Yisrael. Instead of the Bnei Yisrael dying because of their sins, the sacrifices were going to take over our forefathers. So that's one of the reasons why the whole thing, why Yahweh demanded the sacrifices. Let's moving on. Chapter 33, verse 7, Moshe took the Cha'ochel, which means the tent, and nailed it outside the camp and was called the Ochel Moed, which is the testimony of tent. And everyone who saw Yahweh went out to the tent outside the camp. Now let's just pause here for a moment. And we see something very, very strange. What is strange is that Moshe pitched the tent outside the camp. Think about it for a moment. Why isn't it supposed to be in the middle of all the tribes of Israel? In this case, he pitched it outside, and the reason for it is because, remember, it's very fresh. The sin is very, very fresh. They just sin. Our father just sinned a great sin, which is idolatry, and Yahweh wanted to eradicate all of them and just leave Moshe. That's according to the Torah. So one of the reasons why Moshe went out there for another 40 days is because he said, quote unquote, this is what the Torah says, I will go see if I can redeem you. If you notice, all the words that he's using is the same words and the same patterns are Mashiach. He is the one who's going to redeem us. He already redeemed us according to Isaiah 53, but we see the patterns of another Mashiach, which is the Mashiach of Israel, Yahushua. So here we see that one of the reasons why Moshe actually pitched the tent outside the camp, but it was about roughly around 2 miles outside the camp, is because he did not want to expose the children of Israel to die again. To die. And because remember, once again, Yahweh's wrath was very, very, tremendous. So let's see another verse. Verse 8, whenever Moshe left the Ochel, the tent, and all the people will get up and stand, every man at the door of his tent, and look at Moshe until he will come and enter into the tent. You see how fresh this was? You see how they were in their toes, to be honest with you. They were from far away looking up. Did you imagine right now in every tent, every single person was outside their door and just looking up. If Moshe was about to go in, something was going to happen. Let's see in verse 9. Whenever Moshe entered the tent, the Chachel, the pillar of cloud descended and stationed itself at the entrance of the tent. Yahweh spoke with Moshe. That's one of the reasons why they were really in their toes, because they knew the presence of Yahweh, the kabot, the steam of Yahweh was coming down in the form of a pillar of cloud, and they knew what's going on. That's one of the reasons why they were really, really careful in every move they made. Look at what it says. Verse 10, when all the people saw the pillar of cloud stationed at the entrance of the tent, they would rise and bow down, each man at the door of his tent. If you notice how crucial this was, is because once again, the wound was very fresh. They just sinned. And the sin that they knew that they sinned, that's one of the reasons why Yahweh demanded sacrifices. This was taking the position of our forefathers. And that's one of the reasons why Mashiach had to come. He had to come and take everyone's, including myself, sin, and to appease Yahweh's wrath. That's one of the reasons why if you go to the Hebrews chapter 10 and also chapter 8, it says very clear that he demanded, he said, who's going to come and take over all this sin? Mashiach said, here I am. Very crucial, because it's always pointing of our Mashiach. Now let's look into the Aramaic version of this verse, chapter 33, verse 7 of Targum Yonatan. But the Ochel, the tent, took him outside the tents and spread him outside the camp, and brought him outside the camp of the people at the distance of 2,000 cubits. And it was called the Ochel, the tent of the house of instruction. And it was that when someone turned into repentance with a true heart before Yahweh, he went outside the tent of the house of the instruction that was without the camp to confess and pray for the forgiveness of his sins and praying that he will be forgiven. That's one of the reasons why it was called that. That's one of the reasons why Moshe brought him outside, because he did not want any more deaths. Let's go into Targum Yerushalayim, Leviticus 1:1. And it was when Moshe had completed himself to erect the Mishkan, the tent, to anoint it and put it in you, and in all these vessels, Moshe reasoned in his heart and said, within Mount Sinai, it is right for me to enter until such time that I am asked from before Yahweh. And the word of Yahweh called Moshe, for the word of Yahweh was in conjunction with him, of the Mishkan, or the tent, of the ordinances. If you notice here, every time we see these sources, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, whether our Jewish brothers accept it or not, it always points of our Mashiach. Here we says very clear, the word of Yahweh. Who is the word of Yahweh? He's a Mashiach. He is the Emer. He's the pronunciation. He's the Dabar. He's the word of Yahweh. If you guys want to write it down, Jeremiah chapter 1, Ezekiel chapter 1, it always says very clear that the word of Yahweh came to Jeremiah. You notice? It usually says the malach, the angel, but many of the times it says the word of Yahweh. Who's the word of Yahweh? That's the questions we need to ask. Is our Mashiach. Once again, Yahweh is all the way in the back. It always conveys his word. If you guys remember, the scripture is very clear when it says, I will send my word and it will fulfill everything that I've sent it to. It will not come back empty. Exactly what Mashiach did in many of the cases, in many of the occasions, and also in the first century when he came and took a body to remind us that we can too. We can actually do Torah, but it's up to us to convey the Torah in a very precise way, in a very deep down way, which is not the way it was in the first century. So let's jump into the next one. Leviticus 1:2. Talk to the sons of Israel, said to them, when any one of you bring a korban, which is an offering to Yahweh, you might bring your animal offering from the flock, from your herd. See, everything that needed to be in such a way, they needed to bring this offering, this korban, but the question is that we always have to ask, because that's how we're going to get to know more and more Torah. We need to ask ourselves questions that a whole lot of people might not ask. And one of the questions is, what is the meaning of korban? What is the meaning of sacrifice? Let's find out. The meaning of korban means to draw near. That's one of the reasons why the Kohen HaGadol, the main or high priest, the high officer, went inside. He could not come inside without blood. He needed to bring blood. Blood meant remissions of sin. Somebody who was going to be redeemed. In the case of Yom Kippurim, which is the day of the atonement, right? Or the atonements in general, in plural. Here we see that he needed to bring that blood to redeem the whole entire nation of Israel. Now let's jump into the word kara. You guys remember the word Wayikra, right? Kara means to call, voices, proclaim, read. Let's look into the Berich Chadashat. Look 4:16 and 17. He came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and according to his custom, he entered into the synagogue on Shabbat and rose to karat. You see that? To read. And they gave him the book of Isaiah the prophet. He opened the book and found the place where it was written. Now, Everything, and I do want to mention once again, please write it down, because sometimes we say things verbally, but sometimes all these things that I said verbally are not written here on my slides. So those things are very, very crucial. Our Mashiach, when he came in the first century, he did a lot of things. We may or may not think that these things were crucial, were important. And believe me, everything that he did and he said was exactly as the Torah was written. We just need to look a little bit deep into it. We'll find out that everything that he did and said, it was exactly what the Torah says. So he did not err into a lot of things. He did exactly as the Mashiach of Israel. In the case when he entered into a synagogue on Shabbat, and by the way, when he entered on that synagogue on Shabbat, it happens to be a Yom HaKippurim, the Day of the Atonement. How do we know that? He just came from the desert. Okay, he just came from the desert 40 days. If you guys remember, 40 days of Teshuvah, 40 days of repentance, 30 days of the things that we do every 6 months. You guys remember what it is? It is basically the selichot. The selichot are 30 days on the 6th month. And then 10 days after, it becomes Yom HaKippurim. Once again, everything that the Mashiach did was not just random. Okay, let's just pick up the staff and we'll just go into the desert and let's just pray and do fasting. Not really. Everything that he did was according to the Torah. He just came from the desert, okay? And you guys remember that the Kohen HaGadol had needed to send the sheep or the goat on the desert, exactly always pointing them on Mashiach. You see that? After that, he came to Yom HaKippurim. When he came to Yom HaKippurim, he read the verse on Isaiah 61, where it says that the Ruach, the Spirit of Yahweh is within me. He has making me a Mashiach. That's the word for anointing me. Anointing me is Mashiach, which means to anoint. Mashiach means the anointed. So always pointing of our Mashiach. Now 2 Corinthians 3:2. You are our letter written in our hearts, known and read, word for karat, by all men. The reason why I bring this, brothers and sisters, is because we need to understand that just as the Mashiach read that Torah portion, happens to be a Haftorot, okay? We are live written Torahs that we need to display to the world how things should be. We know better. We need to bring the light to the darkness. That's what the Mashiach said to the disciples. And he's saying in this day and age to all of us, we need to be a light to the world. The world is getting darker and darker. Can't get any darker than right now, to be honest with you. But we need to be a light. Just because the world is as chaos as it is, it doesn't mean that we become chaos. We need to be in order just like Yahweh is in order. And that is through Torah. That is by looking at the perfect example, perfect model, which is our Mashiach. We need to follow that footsteps. That's the only reason where we're gonna succeed. Book of Numbers 789. When Moshe came to the tent of meeting to speak with him, he heard the voice speak to him from above the kaporet, which is the lid, which is the cover that was above the ark of the testimony, between the two cherubims, and he spoke with them. Sometimes we need to ask a lot of questions that might not make any sense, but we need to ask ourselves our questions. Did actually Yahweh spoke to him, or was it by telepathy? If we notice, Our Creator can do a lot of things. And I truly believe that Moshe heard a voice. That voice was the word that Yahweh was conveying. That word is Mashiach. When Mashiach, the word of Yahweh, was speaking to him, it was between the two cherubims. If you guys remember how that's what it's called, the enthronement, the art looks like a throne, right? It's because the kabut, the steam of Yahweh, was coming down, like somebody is sitting there, like a throne. Now, the word for Allah means with him, meaning Moshe. It means that Moshe was the one who was the one referring to and no one else. Numbers 12 verse 2. They said, who am I referring to? We're about to find out. Is it true that Yahweh has only spoken to Moshe? Hasn't he talked to us too? And Yahweh heard him. Who were these people? It was Aharon and Miriam. They were the brothers of Moshe. They were flesh and blood, by the way. Here we see that even though they were family, even though we have a family today, people always, doesn't matter if you're family or not, people always going to ask and question why we do the things we do. But we must not faint. We need to continue the work of our Creator. Sometimes our families, especially Ephraim, the north of the kingdom, we come from the idolatrous background. And now that we have returned to the Torah and our family hasn't, we need to be a model. We need to be an example to them. And it doesn't matter if they question the things that we do. Doesn't matter if they question. If they question, I mean, think about it for a moment. Remember that in the very first century, you guys remember that Mashiach, he had brothers, just so you know. It wasn't just him. He had fleshly brothers, and many of them questioned him. Okay? We can see pretty much that he had brothers, and one of them became one of the disciples. Yaakov happens to be one of his brothers, okay? Which is the book of James, if you guys didn't know that. Now, here we see that they question the authority of Moshe. Why was it? I mean, let's look at verse 3. Now this man Moshe was very meek, more than anyone else on earth. And the reason why the scriptures, the Torah says about him being meek and humble is because he didn't really care, to be honest with you. He didn't go after his brothers. He just said, okay, he just rub it off, to be honest with you, because he knew that his brother very well. So he just let it in the hands of our Creator Yahweh. And look at what Yahweh did. He said to them, Yahweh, listen to what I said. When there is a prophet among you, I, Yahweh, make myself known to him in a vision, and I speak to him in a dream. In the case of Yahweh to Moshe was so different. And that's one of the reasons why they were questioning this approach to Moshe, to Yahweh, the approach from Yahweh to Moshe. And look at what Yahweh says in the very next verse. But it's now the way with my servant Moshe. He's the only one who's faithful in my entire house. You guys remember that he was faithful all the way through, even though he had flaws like anyone else. But in the case of Aharon or Aaron and Moshe, do you guys remember that he failed? He bent his knees, his arms, when they forced him to do idolatry. You guys remember that? Yes, Moshe would never do that. Okay? He actually did the opposite. He melted the golden calf. And by the way, I do want to mention the reason why he melted, he pulverized it like the gold dust. Is in the scriptures, the Torah says that he pulverized the golden calf, and he threw it on the streams of water, and have the entire people drunk it. And the reason for it is because, remember, they were about to die. The fury of Yahweh was with them already. They were already dying. If you guys remember when they said they were dying, let not Yahweh speak to us, let Moshe speak to us. They were already dying. And you guys ever question this? You guys ever question yourselves, how did this whole thing work? And the reason for it, brothers and sisters, is because the force of Yahweh, the strength of Yahweh, the power of our Creator coming down and contracting the heavens and earth, putting them all together there in Mount Sinai, they were exposed to radiation. And the reason why we know that in this day and age is because if you got there, just please Google this, water with golden dust. You guys found out, you will find out that they're actually selling this today, water with golden dust. This one is proven by science. The water, when you drink water with golden dust, chances are you will be healed from radiation, from cancer cells. And this is proven by science. If you guys didn't know that, please search it out and Google it. So that's one of the reasons why Moshe did this, because he was giving them, you see how they stand that Moshe went all the way to the second mile, the extra mile for them, to give them the antidote for them not to die. That's one of the reasons why he did what he did, so they would not die of radiation, of cancer, because they were already dying. The negative vibe that they have because of idolatry, they were going to die. And that's the reason, the background of that. Now let's continue. Moshe was faithful in his house, and he's yielding to the Mashiach, just so you know. Numbers 12:8. With him, meaning Moshe, I speak face to face and clearly, not in riddles. He sees the image of Yahweh, so why are you afraid to criticize my servant Moshe? Now, I do want to mention something to make it clear. Moshe did not see the image of Yahweh. This is a way to convey these words, meaning that he didn't see our Yahweh, but he spoke with him word to word. Okay, and everything that Yahweh was conveying to Moshe, he was going to convey to the people, basically it. But he never saw anything, any image, anything that resembles our Creator as a figure. But rather, he saw darkness, he saw lightning, he saw smoke, he saw thunder, he saw everything. He heard everything, but never saw an image. Now, we have to understand this. No one cannot see Yahweh and be alive. The only one who has done this is our Mashiach, who has come down from heaven, took a body, and he himself said it, no one sees the Father except for me. It's very clear, brothers and sisters. Our Creator, Yahweh, is light. He's pure light. We cannot, just think about it. Go outside when it's plain sight, middle of the day, noontime. Look at the sun and stare to it 15 minutes. Watch what happens. You will go blind. We cannot bear light. Simple as that. We are flesh and bone. By the time we can do that is when our bodies would change. And the only one that can change us is Yahweh. When Mashiach returns, the second coming, we will be transformed. Either we're dead or alive, we will suffer a transformation. But that's the only way we can actually see Yahweh. Now let's move on. Leviticus 7:4-5, the two kidneys and the fat that covers them, which is on the sides, that which covers the liver, the Kohen, the officer, will raise them up in smoke at the Mizbeach or altar as an offering made by fire to Yahweh. It is an offering of guilt, or a guilt offering. Now, I do want to mention something very important. Here it states three things. It states the kidneys, states the liver, and what else? it stays what else? The liver, the kidney, and what else? The fat. Three things we need to take in consideration. Three things that mirrors all of us. Let's watch and look why. The fat symbolizes luxury and lifting up of our flesh. Look at what the Psalm 17 verse 10 says. They have shut themselves up in their own fat. Ezekiel 34 verse 3. You eat fat, you have clothed yourself with wool. All this is in the ancient world. Every time you see fat, it was a parallel that somebody had money, a parallel that somebody was wealthy. In other words, somebody have, that you didn't need anything. It was a luxury that you have on, and that's one of the reasons why Yahweh says the fat you need to burn it. Today, in this day and age, we need to be humble, even though we have monetary in our lives. Our life can be monetary, wealthy, but it doesn't mean that we have it all. We need to put always the Creator first. It doesn't matter if we have it or we don't have it. Our Creator should be number one priority in our life. Luxury can lift us up. We can forget the Creators because we have the availability of a lot of things, material things, but that's not everything in life. We need our Creator's assistance all the time. We need health. We need health all the time. We need to always ask for health, because what's the point of having a lot of money if you're sick, if you're ill? Doesn't make any sense. Let's find out the next one. Kidneys is the source of the mind, solid thoughts. Psalms of the Tehillim 16:7. I bless Yahweh because He has me guide in my kidneys, my kilyah. Correct me for nights. In this verse, we see, but first of all, what is the function of the kidneys? The function of the kidneys is basically crucial to filter everything, all the stuff that you don't need. That is the function of our literal kidneys in our bodies. It filters everything that you don't need. We need to have a mind that is clear. Let's go back so we can see it. I bless Yahweh because He has guided me in my kidneys, correct me for nights. What happens when we go to sleep, brothers and sisters? We always go to sleep thinking about something. Either it could be bad or good. In our lives should be good. In our lives should be thinking about Torah. That is the source of our filtering our lives. Torah should be our filter to filter everything, or the garbage that is outside in the world that trying to condition us the way the world is. We need to have the filter, and that the only filter that will work in our minds, it is the Torah. Perfect example for us is our Mashiach. So we need to take this in consideration. In Hebrew, the word is kilyah. Kilyah can be the entrails, the mind, the kidneys, the heart. Now let's jump into the liver. The liver is the source of anger, pride, fame. Lamentations 2 verse 11. My eyes are worn out with weeping. My heart is troubled. My fame has been dashed. We have to always take this in consideration, that we, whether we like it or not, sometimes we are filled with anger, pride, and fame. Doesn't matter where we're coming from, what background are we coming from, where we're going. We always have to consider this, that we always have to consider the Torah and what the Torah is yielding to us how we should convey ourselves. Let me tell you something. You should read the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs tells you a lot of things how we can manage our way of life, our way to convey our words, the way I convey our mannerism and our thoughts, and how we convey to another person. Is a perfect example of the book of Proverbs we can straighten our path, because it has a lot of proverbs that we are so good that we can learn so much from. And all that is taken from the Torah. Now, going back over here, all this is basically at the end of this Torah portion. All I can see is that just as the high priest burned all this fat, all this liver, all this kidney, it tells us the same thing, our Creator, that we need to do the same thing with our lives. We need to always thinking of our lives. How can we sacrifice all this to the Creator by always learning Torah, always learning the instruction of our Creator? How can we make it better for the next day? Because remember, we are in constant instruction from the Creator. Every year that we study Torah, we always see something new. Torah is endless. Torah, we never, ever, ever gonna stop learning Torah. And that's the beauty of it. That is really the beauty of it. You don't need anything else. Okay? You only need Torah and you'll be just fine. But we need to have the hunger, we need to have the drive to always search for what's encoded in the Torah. And that's what this channel is all about. That's why it's called the Torah effects, because the Torah gives these effects, how we convey ourselves, how can we learn what's encoded in the Torah, and what can we get from it, and what can we learn from it. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah. We'll see you next time. Shabbat Shalom.